이번에는 뉴욕타임즈의 이런 기사입니다. Straddling a line between news and opinion. Cable networks lean to the left, create problems at NBC, its parent company. 미국 NBC에 관한 기사인데 방송에 관한 기사입니다. MSNBC placed a big bet on becoming competitive for liberals. Then it doubled down. Time slot on the cable network once devoted to news programming are now occupied by Trump-bashing opinion host. The channel has become a landing spot for high-profile alumni of President Biden's administration, like Jen Psaki, who went from hosting White House press briefings to hosting her own show. On Super Tuesday, when producers aired a portion of a live speech by former President Donald J. Trump, Rachel chastised her bosses on the air. The pattern has been a hit with viewers. Over the past year, MSNBC had jumped past CNN in the ratings, securing second place in cable news behind the perennial leader Fox News. But MSNBC's success has had unintended consequences for its parent company, NBC, an original Big Three broadcaster that still strive to appeal to a mass American audience. NBC's traditional political journalists have cycled between rancor and the resignation that the cable networks are the partisanship, a regular target of Mr. Trump, will color perceptions of their straight news reporting. Local NBC station between the coast have demanded again and again that executives in New York do more to preserve NBC's non-partisan brand, lest the MS and the NBC's liberal bent alienate their conservative viewers. Even Comcast, NBC's corporate owner, which is loath to intervene in news coverage, took the rare step of conveying its concern to MSNBC's leaders when some host and guest criticized Israel as the Hamas attack was unfolding on October 7th, according to three people with knowledge of the discussion. An abrupt course correction to that coverage followed. This account of the tension roiling NBC and its corporate overseers is based on interviews with more than 24 people with knowledge of the company's inner workings, almost all of whom insisted on anonymity to share details of internal discussion. NBC declined to make its top executives available for interviews. the chairman of the NBC Universal News Group, CIJA, had said he wants its division, which encompasses MSNBC, CNBC, a digital streaming service, Telemundo, and the journalistic stalwarts like Nightly News, Meet the Press, and Today to a big tent. Yet his recent efforts to include more conservative voices on the airwaves generated newsroom suspicion and ultimately led to an embarrassing rebellion over the hiring of Ronna, a former Republican Party chief, who aided Mr. Trump's attempt to overturn his loss in the U.S. presidential election in 2020. MSNBC hosts, for their part, view their role in the political debate as more important than ever. They dismiss the accusation that MSNBC is a Fox News for Democrats and say their message that Mr. Trump's candidacy represents a unique and clear threat to democracy is an urgent one for the electorate to hear. And the executives inside the NBC's corporate shoot at the Rockefeller Center say they are confident that viewers know the difference between the company's various news brands. Any related challenges, they argue, are of a high-class sort, because their cable channels give NBC an advantage in relevance and revenue over its original big three competitors, ABC and CBS, which have no cable presence. Our strategy is built on our distinct complementary brand, including NBC News, CNBC, NBC News Now, MSNBC, and Telemundo. The NBC Universal News Group said in a statement that has driven our performance as the nation's leading news organization with the largest reach. Comcast does not disclose the news division's earnings in its reports to Wall Street. The tension inside the NBC are in some ways a microcosm of the challenges facing many traditional news organizations as the United States hurtle toward the 10th presidential election. How to maintain trust and present neutral, fact-based reporting in a fractionalized era when partisanship carries vast financial and cultural reward. But the company's challenge is also unique. It must juggle a broadcast news operation bound by traditional standards of impartiality and the cable channel increasing bound by the partisan preferences of an intensely loyal viewership. How NBC navigated these dueling imperatives will have important implications for Comcast, a Philadelphia-based conglomerate known for its aversion to the political spotlight. It will also have consequences for coverage of the presidential campaign, where MSNBC's cable news opinion makers sustain and galvanize the Democrat faithful. The NBC broadcast network reaches millions of the potentially persuadable voters critical to both of the parties, which have sought to turn NBC's internal tension to their own advantage. Left, right, left. MSNBC has caused complete headaches since its inception. NBC formed the channel as a joint venture with Microsoft in 1996 with the hope that it would thrust all the valuable NBC news into the cable world, as Tom, a former NBC executive who helped to found the cable network, described it in an interview. But critics mocked the new 24-hour channel for its informal approach to news, mixing NBC's biggest stars with the younger personalities on a relaxed-looking set. It was almost immediately outflanked by Fox News, which followed MSNBC to market that same year and rose to the top of the cable news ratings as the first 24-hour TV channel with an overt political appeal. MSNBC struggled with its identity. It moved to the left ahead of the Iraq War and later moved right by hiring new hosts like the former Republican Congressman Joe. Soon, it shifted leftward again as the host of the case hit a nerve with its strident anti-Bush and open anti-Fox commentary. But when Andrew, a veteran producer, took over NBC's news division in 2015, he decided that the channel needed to tone down its partisan image. Under Mr. Leck, who oversaw MSNBC's creation in an earlier NBC stint, the cable network bumped the Reverend L from the weekday schedule, hired the former Fox anchor Greta, and added a more straightforward news program, including a daily version of Meet the Press, NBC's flagship political show with Chuck Todd. Mr. Todd was the game, but would come to believe that his MSNBC duties ultimately hurt the Meet the Press franchise. Several people at NBC said in interviews the daily version of the show fell increasingly out of step with the MSNBC's partisan slant. Even as the Republicans used its association with the liberal cable network to deny interview requests from the flagship Sunday edition of Meet the Press. Then Mr. Trump's ascent shocked the Democratic base, and viewership of Miss Meadow and other left-leaning hosts spiked as their program became a kind of televised sacred space. MSNBC's ratings surged. Inheriting a mess, Mr. Conde succeeded Mr. Lack in spring 2020, a Wharton-trained business executive who sits on the boards of Walmart and PepsiCo. He came up through the corporate side of news, having led a turnaround at Telemundo after serving as the president of Univision Networks. Accordingly, Mr. Conde was expected to impose a more disciplined and neater corporate sensibility to the division. He was almost immediately confronted by the mess that he had inherited. Within a few weeks of Mr. Conde's ascension, Mr. Trump attacked the NBC when it announced the hiring of a new contributor, Lisa, a former FBI lawyer who became a lightning rod for her role in the investigation of his campaign ties to Russia. After an initial MSNBC appearance, she did not show up again. A few months later, NBC faced criticism from the other direction when it booked Mr. Trump for a primetime interview on the night of a presidential debate that he had boycotted. Mr. Biden was appearing at the same time on ABC. Ms. Meadow chastised her bosses about it on the air. That sort of partisan tumult has opened wild another important constituency for Mr. Conde. NBC's appeal-rated regional station, which the company rely on to carry its major news programs to markets throughout the country. The stations tend to be deeply embedded and deeply trusted in their communities. Many of them operate in Republican voting states or counties and shaped that whenever MSNBC, which Mr. Trump regularly calls MSDNC, drew conservative ire. Over the years, the appeal rate, many of which would have been thrilled to see MSNBC's leftward tilt, abandoned entirely, increasingly urged NBC executives to better distinguish its content from the NBC journalism like Today and nightly news that they carried on their station. At one point, after Mr. Conde took over, executives talked about the possibility of doubling down on partisanship and stripping MSNBC of news altogether, defining it as a pure opinion channel. The company would use the news at the new NBC News Now streaming service started under Noah Oppenheim when he was the NBC News president for 24-hour news, according to two people with knowledge of the conversation. That idea fizzled. Mr. Conde was not prepared to entirely abandon news, but he began to better distinguish the various parts of his news division, which effectively moved MSNBC and NBC News further apart.